Hey everybody, Shady here again. So today I'm going to be finally discussing the JRPGs on the Xbox 360. Obviously a subject I think only I care about, but I thought maybe someone else might find it interesting. If you're collecting for the system, you might find it interesting as well. There are lows actually on there. It's actually one of the reasons why I really like the 360 as a system, because Microsoft actually wanted to try to put a foothold in the Japanese market, which is really interesting. They made a big push in Japan, really big launch. They had tons of these, not only these games, but there's like loads of shmups and other things. Obviously, it didn't really hit off massively there, but it did have some kind of a cult following anyway. But yeah, there's tons there. I don't have everything because there's some that are region free and a couple that I don't have yet, and for other reasons. We'll get into that in a bit anyway. But first of all, one of the big ones, the first one to release anyway, was a game I think only a few people have heard of, and that's Enchanted Arms. So first of all, you can see, yes, this is a Ubisoft game, which is a bit strange, Ubisoft doing a Japanese RPG. But there's actually something a bit more interesting about this game. If we look on the back here, you'll see it back here. If you can see, if that's focused, yes, this game was actually developed by From Software. Yes, that From Software, the guys who did the Souls games, Elden Ring in particular, the latest game. But yeah, for some reason, they wanted to do a JRPG. A little known thing about From Software, before they did Souls games, before they did Demon Souls, for example, they were a company that were known for doing loads of interesting, obscure games. Obviously, they did the Kingsfield games, which kind of later developed into the Souls games. They did a couple of games for the GameCube called Lost Kingdom. They did the Otogi games for the Xbox. They did like loads of obscure games for the PS2 as well. There was this I can't remember the name of it, but there was a really interesting horror game they did as well, where you're playing as some guy in space, but there's like ghosts and stuff. But yeah, this is one of the ones they did. This was, as it says in the back of it, this is the first JRPG released for the generation, so it's kind of fans of the genre, this is what they had to deal with first. But what's really interesting about this game is that it's it has a few little things that make it above other JRPGs, because really the plot is quite a kind of generic one. The hero has a group of friends, has to save the world. But it has some really cool things. First of all, the voice acting is amazingly terrible. I mean, imagine Troll 2 or The Room, that levels, or really terrible porno acting sort of thing in a video game. That's basically what this is. Also, the main guy is a complete idiot as well. His name's Atsuma, and you just get a lot of laughs out of that, how dumb he is. But yeah, the basic plot of the game is our friend here, our guy here, Atsuma. He's a part of this magical academy, the school, and him and his friends, they decide to kind of explore this cave, and then in the bottom of it, there's this thing called a devil golem. So you have golems and then devil golems, which are the more powerful ones. Golems, they're essentially just like the demons of the world, but they awaken this one called the Snow Queen. You can see her there in the background, and then she basically awakens, wreaks havoc in the world. And then she also kidnaps one of his mates and turns him into her slave. And then you basically have to join forces with a bunch of people to try to rescue him. But what is also interesting about it, not just that it has the voice acting, but there's this really interesting system. The battles are basically on a grid. So it's a turn-based RPG, but then you have to, your moves essentially take different spaces. You have I think it's a 9x9 grid. You can move them back and forth either way, and then your moves will hit in an area depending. It can either just be a couple ahead or below, if you know what I mean. So you really have to think out your moves strategically. And then also there's an almost Pokemon-like element, because you have these things, the golems themselves can be captured, or well, you create them anyway. You'll get pieces which will let you make a golem. And then you have, I think it's 4 party members, or it might be 3 actually, and then you can have a golem take the place of a party member, basically. So they'll essentially be your party members. You have the human characters and then the golems. Let's say if you're looking for someone to be like a healer, a dedicated healer, and you're lacking one in your party, you'd use a golem. If you want like it to do a certain elemental affinity, you can, because that's another interesting thing about this game. Each character will essentially be a different element. So Atsuma, for example, is fire, and then different characters would be the different elements. So obviously certain bosses will have weaknesses to elements, so you'll need to have a golem to be able to take care of that, or like, you know, exploit those weaknesses. But anyway, it's a really cool game. I think it's definitely worth your time. Kind of definitely a hidden gem. There was also a PS3 version of this game. It came out about a year later, obviously, alongside the PS3. That version has a few more golems in it, but not that this matters now, but it removed the online aspect, because there was actually an online aspect of the game where you could battle each other's golems, Pokemon style. And another really cool thing is that version is actually backwards compatible. So if you're interested, you can play it on an Xbox One or even an Xbox Series console, and increase the resolution up to 4K if you're interested. But it is 720p on the normal 360, and it works fine anyway. Next up, so obviously because they were trying to really push big in Japan, they made sure to get the help of Hironobu Sakaguchi. So as you know, when he left Square Enix after the release of, I think it was The Spirits Within, because then that flopped and he basically left by mutual consent essentially. He formed his own studio called Mistwalker, but one of the first things he did was do well, he came to an agreement with Microsoft where they decided to do a couple of games. Those two games, first of all, you have this one, Blue Dragon. This is basically, the best way to describe this is like kind of their answer to Dragon Quest, basically. So you have obviously Nobuo Uematsu, who did the soundtracks for a lot of the Final Fantasy games alongside Sakaguchi, and then the art was actually done by Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame, and obviously you should know him from the Dragon Quest series as well. But yeah, this one is a pretty simple story. So your group of characters gain the abilities to control these dragons, which essentially do their magic abilities, and they kind of JoJo style, like stands come from behind them and do the attacks kind of thing, which is kind of cool. And then there's like this magic dude or something, the main villain. I can't see a picture of him here. I thought we'd see him, but they're basically on a journey to stop this wizard. The evil Nini is his name, yeah. So basically, yeah, your group of characters, I think it's like 4 characters in all. It's one of them where you get the party and that's it, pretty much. You're trying to defeat this dude. And the game just looks really cool because it's Toriyama art. It has that like beautiful art style to it. Another interesting thing about this game is it's actually one that's multiple discs, so you can get it on 3 discs, which is kind of cool. Has a really cool, unique soundtrack, as you would imagine, because it's Sakaguchi. This one, I believe, used Unreal Engine 3. Both these games did, if I remember correctly. So there is some like issues with frame rate and some slowdown here and there. But again, these are backwards compatible, so if you play them on the newer Xboxes, it's fine. It cleans all that up anyway. But yeah, it's a really cool, interesting game. Yeah, I think it's one that's worth your time if you like JRPGs. You know, if you like Dragon Quest or any Sakaguchi's work, you'll pretty much like this game. It's nothing standout, but it's just pretty much like, you know, it's what it does well, pretty much. I guess that's the best way to describe it. Really cool game though. And then the next game, which came out through Mistwalker, was this one, Lost Odyssey. So basically, as you can tell, that one was essentially the version of Dragon Quest. So with the name, as you can tell, this is basically their Final Fantasy. And yeah, it's a pretty amazing game. In my opinion, this is maybe my favorite Xbox first party title, one of my favorites, the reason why I bought the 360 in fact. So in this game, we journey with Kaim and his companions. Kaim is essentially an immortal, which means that he can't die at all. So what's happened is he's lost his memory. So in the beginning of the game, there's this amazing cutscene where you see this giant battle going on between 2 sides, and Kaim is literally the only person to survive after this giant explosion happens. And he doesn't have a memory. So then he's just working for the guy here, Gungaga, I believe, or maybe that isn't his name. It's something similar to that anyway. But he's basically working for this dude, doing little odd jobs in this village, and then, or town, sorry. He sent on a mission to check on this thing called ground staff, which is like this magical device, basically, which some of the people don't like. And then he and Seth, and then I think he's also, who's another immortal, by the way, and then he's joined by Jensen, and then they have to go check ground staff, and then from there, the story kind of goes on. You meet the other characters, you find out why your memory's been gone, and yeah, it's a really cool game. Another really awesome thing about this game, one thing I like, you get 5 party members, by the way. You have this kind of row system as well, so you have a front row and a back row. The front row would kind of have a protective barrier before the back row, if that makes sense. So essentially, let's say your 2 front guys, they're like, let's say they have 500 HP each. You'll essentially have a 1000 wall for the people behind, so it'll mitigate the damage. So you have your kind of tanky characters in the front, and you can protect your mages in the back. And then also there's another system. So like Final Fantasy IV style, your human characters or mortals, they'll learn abilities as they level up, but then the immortals don't learn any abilities. But what they can do is like equip a or kind of like learn off of a mortal character. So you kind of similar to like Final Fantasy V in a way, almost like with the job system, where you'll like kind of learn those abilities of that particular person. So let's say if you want to learn, if you want kind to learn some white magic, you know, you'll take an ability from Jensen, and then you have to fight some battles, gain the SP, and then it becomes your ability permanently. So you can kind of build your characters that way. And then there's also the ruin system as well, where you'll get these little items that you equip, and they'll essentially add extra abilities to you. The rings, sorry, not runes, rings. Also, when you attack, when you have the rings equipped, so for example, you have a ring equipped, that will be like, that's 20% damage. But then when you're attacking, you have the actual ring itself, and this other ring that goes down, and you have to hit it in the perfect spot to get that extra damage or whatever it would be. Yeah, overall, pretty great game. Again, on the base Xbox, there's some minor slowdown here and there, but it's not too bad. Still a really cool game, definitely worth your time. Yeah, and those are the Miss Walker games. Then there was actually a couple of games by Bandai Namco. One of the first ones being Eternal Sonata. Again, this one is also on PS3 as well, but was I think more people sort of see it as a 360 game. Basically, this one is a really interesting game. So essentially, the person who made this game was a massive fan of Frédéric Chopin, who's a pianist and composer. I believe he's, I can't remember his from, I'm going to say France. I don't know if Chopin's French name, but whatever, we'll just say he's from France. And he essentially made this game as like a love letter to the guy. So essentially, Chopin is on his deathbed, and then we're transported to this world that he's living inside of during his last days. And then we essentially, this girl here is the main character. Basically, like, I think she wants to try to make it so there's less taxation on the people or something. So she's gone on this journey, and then she actually meets Chopin himself and the group of characters and this resistance group. And then you essentially have to try to help people out. This one is actually an action RPG, by the way. It has a really interesting, unique system. If you can see there, you can kind of do your attacks with the characters. It's all about kind of timing your combos correctly and stuff. It's a really cool game. This one though, the only thing I will say about it, even though it's a cool game, it kind of definitely leans towards the pretentious side almost, because between chapters, there's like, they play these pieces of Chopin over all this footage of like, real world footage, and then there's these kind of descriptions explaining everything. But it's still one of those really cool, unique things you can only get in a video game, types of storytelling you can get there. It's still a really awesome game, worth your time, at least one playthrough anyway. And another one by Namco, this is one of their big series, one of kind of the big JRPG series, is Tales of Vesperia. Believe it or not, this is really insane. Tales of Vesperia, for this generation anyway, only came out on 360 internationally. In Japan it got a PS3 version, but overseas we only got it on here. So I believe this also was a tiny exclusive, so the PS3 version came out a bit later. But yeah, this game, if you don't know, Tales of Vesperia is basically a action RPG where you, similar to Final Fantasy, where each one is basically set in a new world, new cast characters. This is our main character here. I'll show you the back of the cover as well. As you can see, it's really cool. Yeah, this one's interesting. I think if you've maybe played Tales of Arise recently, you should definitely go back to this one next. As I said, there is the PS3 version, but that's Japanese only, and there is also a remaster, but there isn't a physical version of that. And that one added a new voice track, I think, as well, and a few quality of life things. One thing with this game is there's like tons of side quests in this game. They're easy to miss and everything. So, like, if you're going to try 100% the game, you may want to look up a guide or something. But yeah, it's still a really fun game. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Again, you know, our main dude, he's part of like a kind of resistance type group, and you're trying to basically take out the Empire. Yep, as it says there. You know, you're struggling to take over the Empire. But yeah, it's a really nice game. Awesome cel-shaded look as well, which most of the Tales games have. So if you like the Tales games, you probably play it already. But if not, give it a go. It's a really cool game. And next, we've got another one which I think is probably cheating a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Technically isn't a JRPG, but I thought I'd include it. And that's the game Catherine. So this one was, it's kind of related to the Persona series in a way. So if I'm correct, in Persona 4 Golden, the area that they're in, the Cath and the character, you actually see them in the game. So I'm going to class it as one anyway. So this game is essentially a puzzle game. So how it works is you play as the main guy, Vincent, and then that's his fiance, Catherine. But then he meets this other younger girl, Catherine, and then it kind of, he starts having an affair with this girl. And basically how it works is you spend your day in the bar, and then you can sort of interact with either one of the girls or do whatever you want on your phone, you know, interact with characters. And then when you go to sleep, you have these nightmares, which are essentially the puzzles. And then you essentially, if you can kind of see it there, you have to like climb up, pull the puzzles, build platforms to get to the top. And that's basically how it works. It's a really cool, unique game. As I said, it is technically not a JRPG, but it has those kind of visual novel-ish elements like in the Persona games. So it's still a really unique one. Also, if I'm correct, this one actually does have a interchangeable thing as well. So you can, if you want the cover to be the other Catherine, you can. Again, this one did get a remaster as well. They added some extra content. That's available for PS4, I think maybe Xbox One and the Switch as well. So if you want it on the Switch, you can get that as well. But that one, I think there is actually an online aspect to this where you can do essentially race to the top. And that remastered version changed quite a bit. So if you're interested in that, you may want to go for this one over that one. Pick your poison, up to you really. But yeah, that's another cool one. Definitely worth your time. Another one, Sega game. Because obviously Xbox Live was a big deal, so Microsoft wanted some online games. So Fantasy Star Universe. So obviously this game, there is actually a single player element where you can kind of do the dungeons and stuff on your own. And then online wise, you just have other players join you and you can explore the world as a team. But yeah, you obviously, you know, you pick your class and then you build your team and then you take on dungeons, get more equipment to improve, blah, 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 you know, old school MMO type of stuff. If you played the other Fantasy Star Online, it's kind of like that. I think most Fantasy Star players didn't like this one as much, but it's still cool. You still have a single player element and it's still fun enough. You know, give it a go if you do. If you're interested, it's you know, it's a Fantasy Star game. Can't go wrong there. Next up, there is another one by Sega. One of my one I've talked about before. One of my favourites, Resonance of Fate. So again, with this game, it's very interesting, unique JRPG. It's an action one again. is obviously this generation was interesting because they started phasing out turn-based games, started doing more action stuff, but this one does a really good job with it. I'll show you the back there. So we're basically like a group of sort of mercenaries, people who do odd jobs, and we're in this, I think it's called Basil Tower. The world around us is basically uninhabitable, sorry, not inhabitable, because there'd be no point then, would there? And this tower was basically erected for, the last people in humanity to live. The people more money on top, people with less on the bottom. And then I think it's, what is it, Voshron, Zephyr, and Elena, I think are the 3 characters, or Lena is her name? Yeah. So the girls just joined you recently. The opening cutscene, you see her like jumping off some pillar or something, but then she survives somehow, and then she's like the newbie, and then the 3 you have to essentially like do jobs around this place, and then the story kind of unfolds there. It kind of plays a little bit like an anime series in a way, where there's a lot of little episodes that don't seem like really related to much, but then the story kind of eventually builds itself onto the gameplay itself. So overworld wise, you'll have your little towns, small areas which you can explore. You have the main area, which is where you start each episode. You have like the main area where you can get your sort of main quest and side quests. And then the side quests just involve like doing little odd jobs, get a particular item, give it to another person around the village or whatever, or in different areas around Basil. And then obviously the main quest will be climbing up to a certain area in Basil, and then you kind of do usually like you don't really have a dungeon, but you'll have like there'll be like a few zones you'll go through, and then you'll eventually fight a boss at the end, is how it really works. And then the actual battle system is the coolest part, because you control the 3 characters. It's called like the tri-attack system, I think it is, where you'll have your 2 types of weapons, because they use guns. You'll have your normal weapons which do scratch damage, like machine guns and stuff like that, I think. And then you'll have like handguns and I think grenades, which will do like normal damage. So the whole point is regular weapons don't do a lot of damage, but you need to do scratch damage to be able to do big amounts of damage, basically. And then you also have to control the movement of the characters, and you're limited to how many moves you can do per turn, basically. And then when you cross characters together, when they meet each other up on a line, you'll be able to get your tri points, I think they're called, or something, or resonance points, I think it is, and then you can do like a big, awesome attack. It's one of them where it's like steep learning curve, but when you get used to it, it's really good. You may possibly want to look up a tutorial on the actual battle system itself to maybe get into it a bit more, because that's kind of the one thing with it, is it's getting used to that battle system. But yeah, that's that one anyway. It's a really cool game, definitely worth your time. And obviously the last lot are basically all Square Enix games, because one of the major things obviously to try to hit that market in Japan was to get Square Enix to support them. So there is one game I don't have yet, which is Final Fantasy 11, which I mean I probably won't have anyway, because obviously it's an online game. That was like the first major thing they had, was getting FF11, an online MMO, which was like the big game at the time. It was on PS2 and PC, but obviously the Xbox version was like a big HD version. So they basically released, it was like a complete edition at the time, with all the expansions and everything on a single disc, and then I think later there was maybe 1 or 2 extra expansions going on. What is really interesting is that 11 is still supported, but then the console support went like about 5 years ago, I think, which is really strange when you think about it. But yeah, you can still play on PC if you're interested. There is also another game, Magna Carta 2, which I haven't added to my collection yet. But that's a cool game. It kind of has a real-time Xenoblades-ish type battle system. And yeah, that's kind of a bit of an obscure one. It's just, I'm looking for the right price before I get it. And then there are another 2, the Record of the Argus War games. I think there's Record of the Argus War and Record of the Argus War 0, which didn't come over here in PAL territories, but you can get those ones in North America, yeah, if you're interested. and obviously in Japan. I'm sure you can import them if you have a modded Xbox anyway, or an NT1 or whatever, or whatever the PAL's called, NA or something, the American territory ones. But anyway, the last lots of games, we've got some Square Enix games. We've got this one here, Infinite Discovery. This one is exclusive to Xbox to this day. It says it right there, I think. Yep, only on Xbox 360. Yeah, so this one is really cool. So we play as a dude who's just like a flute player or something. He's been mistaken for the leader of this empire or something. And then he's essentially trapped in prison. And then this other girl here helps him break out. And then he's essentially embroiled in this plot where he has to help this group fight off the empire, you know, help a group fight another group, sort of thing, JRPG stuff. But this game's cool because it has a real-time combat system, action-based. And early on, you're just basically just doing normal combats, but then eventually you'll be able to control a large number of people. And you have to like create different groups and almost do kind of, you feel like a little general in a way, almost. It's really interesting and cool. Yeah, and obviously early on the Xbox, there's no other way of playing it, which is cool. Backwards compatible as well. So yeah, give this one a go. I think you'll like it. Next up is an insane one, which I can't believe, which is Star Ocean 4. Yeah, if you can't, I mean, I find it hard to believe that Star Ocean was exclusive to 360, but it was for a year. Then it did eventually come to PlayStation. It definitely did in Japan. I don't know if we got it over here on PlayStation, but that was like the complete edition. But as you can see, this is like the I've got the collector's edition. I managed to get this one for like, I think £8 back in the day. Like, yeah, it's strange. A lot of these collector's editions don't really hold any value, do they? I mean, that's a completely different subject, I guess. But yeah, with this one, yeah, Star Ocean is basically JRPG Star Trek, really, in a way. Our heroes land on a planet. Yeah, it says right here, after the ruins of World War III, surviving members of the human race unite and try to survive. So that's basically we're going onto different planets, trying to figure out what's going on. The thing with this game is, with Star Ocean anyway, is it was like one of the first big action RPGs, even from the first game on like, I think Super Nintendo or something. So yeah, you got a really cool, unique combat system. You control your 4 characters at once as well. Each character essentially has a different weapon and has different attack types. So, you know, you kind of want to, like, similar to like a Xenoblade, where you're going to want to have to switch between them. Don't just stick to the one character. Yeah, and you can have a good time with this one anyway. It's a really cool game. Again, there's a remaster available for PS4 and PC. Yeah, I think the PS3 version was only in Japan, that's why they did that remaster. But that one's cool because you can play the game in like 4K and everything, and you get the option for 60 frames, so it's really up to you. But yeah, you can't go wrong with this version anyway, it's really cheap. Next up is a really infamous one. This one's really funny because we're talking about The Last Remnants. If you don't know about the history of this game, so basically, originally this game was announced at PS3 E3 conference, and then randomly, they just, I think it was meant to come out like, what's it say on the back here? So I want to say it was meant to come out in like 2009 or something. Yeah, and then randomly, it just came out like, I think November 2008, just on Xbox 360. But then when it released, it was like notoriously buggy and like clearly unfinished. There was massive amounts of pop-in, slowdown, loads of little glitches and everything. So it was kind of like, it was just an unfinished mess. So people didn't really give it a chance. Eventually though, Microsoft added the ability to install all games to the console. So when you did that, it actually made the game run okay, like playable, not perfect, but playable. Yeah, and then the PS3 version never came out. It did eventually come to the PC though, like a year or so later, which is a much better version. And then after that, they did finally release a remaster for PS4, Switch, and I think it came to mobile platforms as well. And I think the PC might have got that remaster as well, but not Xbox, which is weird. So this is the only Xbox version you can play. with this game, we have our main guy, Ross Sykes. And basically his sister's been kidnapped, and he ends up getting help from this this king. I think his name is David or something like that, and his people. And then you have these things called the remnants, which are kind of like the crystals in Final Fantasy, basically, which give power. And the whole story is essentially figuring out why they kidnapped your sister and the past of his family and stuff like that. But this game has a really cool battle system though. So it's like a big battle. So it's not just a small group of party one-on-one. It's still a turn-based thing. But how it works is you have like units. So you have your main commander character, and then you'll have some little units, and then you can have multiples of these. So it's like doing a giant battle. And then the battles, you kind of have, you can see it in the back of the picture there, but you have this line here, so the blue line, the red line, which indicates how well you're doing. And you essentially want to defeat the enemies to increase that line. And obviously the better you're doing, I think you get some perks if that blue line is more towards your area, or like filling it more. Yeah, so you'll issue commands like push forward, attack, do special abilities, blah blah blah, and then they'll do their, and then like when you give that command, then it will play out, the turn will play out, and then what's really interesting is that then you can turn this off, but then you have like these quick time events, and then if you hit the button prompt at the right time, like X or whatever, or A button or whatever, then you'll do some bonus damage, but you can turn that off, which I prefer to do. But yeah, it's a really cool game, unique one. This was a very experimental time for JRPGs, so this is one of those experimental games. So yeah, still really cheap as well. I got this and the next game I'm going to talk about for like a tenner together. So yeah, and now let's talk about that next game, which is a really cool one, which is Nier. Yeah. So if you don't know about this game, it's like the ultimate hidden gem. It recently, obviously, a couple of years back, it got the remaster, which it really needed. So this game, if you don't know who Yoko Taro is, he's like one of the most like interesting, unique dudes ever. So he originally made this game called Dragon Guard, which was like this Musha game, really terrible game, really. And then it had like this, it had multiple endings basically. And then if you get like the ultimate secret ending, so in the game you have like your dragon, and you can attack with your dragon. You and your dragon come into the real world, and then you have to destroy this giant like statue goddess lady, and then that ending actually leads into this game, which is very strange. So essentially what's happened is whatever like was left after the destruction of this goddess has created this thing called Black Scroll, I think it is, which is like this plague that's killing humanity, and there's like only a few people left. And there's a couple of differences. So basically in Japan there was the PS3 and the 360 version. The PS3 version we play as the brother, or I think they're just called Nair. Essentially, they don't really refer to them as a name, but I think we call them the brother or the father. And in that game, he's trying to save his sister, but then the 360 version in Japan, they decided to do the make him a dad, because I think for the Western release they wanted to have something that appealed more to the West, and they thought making him a father was more appealing as opposed to a brother. So that's why you have Daddy Nair. So yeah, for the PS3 360 version overseas, you play as the dad instead. So the story, trying to save your daughter, trying to cure her of the Black Scroll. And what's really cool about this game is it's like an action RPG. You have dungeons and everything, but the story is so cool. Like, you first play through, you have all these questions. You should know this if you played Nier Automata as well, I suppose. But there's all these questions you still have unanswered, and then on subsequent playthroughs, the story kind of unfolds differently, and you get the full picture after like 4 playthroughs. I think it is. The game isn't too long either, by the way. You don't have to play through the full game in those subsequent playthroughs. Obviously the remasters are what you want to go for, because it's like a full 60 frames a second game, and it's just been improved in every way. But if you want to play as the dad, you have to get this version anyway. And this one is also backwards compatible and has FPS boost for the series consoles if you're interested. So that might be the way you want to play really, but still a really awesome game. Yeah, a bit more kind of notable now, obviously. So go back and play it. It's a good game. Okay, and I've got the last 3 games, which are the big ones. Obviously, as you know, there's like 2 major series in Japan, which are like the big ones. You've got Dragon Quest, and then you've got the other one, which is Final Fantasy. So one major thing that they obviously Microsoft needed was Final Fantasy, so they made sure to get Final Fantasy 13. So originally, people just assumed it was going to be a PS3 exclusive, but then I think it was E3 2007 or 8 or something, where Microsoft took to the stage and Square Enix took to the stage, sorry, and announced 13 for the PS3. What was funny is at the time there was loads of boos in the audience, which is kind of funny because I don't know, people just associate it with PlayStation or something. Yeah, this is kind of it's an interesting one. I mean, I like the game myself, but a lot of people, it's like the one that everyone regards as the worst one. Yeah, I think a lot of the criticism probably is valid, and I can see it, but I still like the game. So I'll show you the back of the game itself. So yeah, in this game we play as Lightning and a group of characters who they live in a place called Cocoon. So you have Pulse, which is the normal world, but that's like entirely uninhabitable and everything. Then you have Cocoon, which is like, as you can see here, which is that area there, which is like, this area where mankind can thrive on their own sort of thing. It's essentially like imagine like a Dyson sphere, basically. That's what it is really, kinda. It's like this kind of like little area where people live, a little planet on its own. And basically what happens is it starts off with Lightning on this train going to save her sister. So there's this thing called the Purge, which is where they take people who've been infected by Pulse and kick them out of Cocoon, send them to Pulse. And then she essentially turns herself in, is on this train, starts kicking off. She meets this other guy called Saz, and then it goes on from there. And then we see all of our main characters, because in this game we actually switch between the characters constantly, and there's not really one main character. And what happens is they all reach the Fal'Cie, because there's like a Pulse Fal'Cie that's somehow come onto Cocoon, and then all of them, they fight it, and then they all get branded. So basically what that means, it's essentially like, imagine like the Warriors are like, but it's like a twist on it. So they get branded by the Lucy, and they by the Fal'Cie, and become Lucy, which basically means they have a focus, which if they don't complete, they become Seath, which are like these zombies. So then the game is about trying to figure out what the focus is and trying to go against it. That's why, like, as I said, you have the courage to face your destiny, and like fighting fate is like the I think it's the battle music in the game. That's basically what it is. But the interesting thing about the game is it's very strange. It's super linear early on. You're basically just going through corridors, battling enemies, getting from point A to point B until you reach Cocoon. Until you reach Pulse, which is this giant open area where you get to do all these little kill quests and stuff. So that's why a lot of people don't really like this game as much, because it's just too linear for them. I think it's cool because the battle system is a lot of fun. So the battle system in this game, you have the paradigm shift system. So it's like a take on the roles or jobs from previous games. So each character there's like 6 different jobs. Not every character has every job from the start. They'll have like 3 different ones, or they'll learn them as the story progresses, and then you switch between them. So you'll have like a commander, which is like the attacking class. You have the ravager, which is like the mage. You have like a medic, heals, blah blah blah, and you have to build like your different paradigms. So you have like, I think it's 6 overall, and then you have to choose the classes for each character, the roles, and build your paradigms on that. So if you want like a 3 ravager one to do loads of magic on an enemy, you can, but the problem is there's a stagger gauge. If you magic abilities will make the stat gauge go up, but then it goes down really quickly. So you need to offset that with an attacking gauge. So you can build like 2 Ravagers and a Commander, which would be a really good one for building up stack gauge. Yeah, it's a really cool game, awesome battle system. Very story and cutscene heavy, quite linear for the most part, but I still think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's worth your time. You know, at least one playthrough. I don't think it's that bad as a lot of people think it is. And then yeah, there was actually 2 sequels to the game as well, which are the last 2 games we're going to talk about now. The first one being Final Fantasy 13-2. So after the end, I don't want to spoil too much, but after the end of 13, you know, some big stuff happens. Sarah's revived, and then in this game we actually play as Sarah. So what happens is there's another character called Noel, who's sent by Lightning to protect Sarah. I'm not going to really spoil what Lightning is, and then the whole plot revolves around going into different times. So you have, what this game did really well, very similar to kind of like 10-2, where they kind of took those assets from the first game and built some other ones, but then to kind of add more of a game to it, they kind of create different time periods. So how it works is you start off in Bowden, which is a normal area, and then you go into different areas, and then you have the Historic Crux, I think it's called, which is like the time travel mechanic thing, similar to like a Chrono Trigger in a way. You'll go to the different time periods of each area. So each area essentially has like 3 areas: present, past, future sort of area. And the battle system is near enough the same, but instead of having, you have the 2 party members, Sarah and Noel, and the third member is taken up by a creature, an enemy. So similar to like a Pokemon type thing again, like I was saying with Enchanted Arms in a way. So when you defeat an enemy, they have a chance of dropping their crystal, which is like the essence which lets you use them in battle. And then you essentially, you build your paradigms like you do in the first game, and then the enemy will take up each one. So obviously Sarah and Noel can change their classes, but each monster is only a single one. So if you need an extra Ravager, you'll use an enemy that is a Ravager, or a monster that is. If you need a commander, you use one that is blah blah blah, similar to that basically. Yeah, it's a really cool game. That character there as well, you have Caius, who's kind of like the main villain in this game. Also, the soundtrack is really cool, because one thing with 13 and this whole trilogy is this is the first game to use like vocals in a lot of the soundtrack. So there's a lot of really cool sort of poppy sounding stuff, which is really nice. I really like the music in the Historia Crux itself when you're like between areas. It's just amazing. So many great tracks in this game. It's a really cool one. They tried to kind of fix a lot of the issues with 13 as well. So you have, it's not really this big linear area. You actually have open areas and towns and interact with NPCs and stuff. So if you had an issue with that in 13, give this one a go if you haven't already. It's really fun. And then the last game I want to talk about was not 13-3, Final Fantasy 13. Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13 specifically. So again, not to spoil too much, but then in this game, we play as Lightning. After the events of the other games, it's like we're at this time where we're at basically the end of days essentially. I think time has stopped, but there's only a few days left, and then Lightning, her job is to try to save as many souls as possible, similar to like a Valkyrie or something. And how this works is you have the main sort of area, which is kind of this place separate from everywhere else, and then you go into the towns. You have like 5 major areas, I think it is something like that, or 4 or so, and you visit these towns, and then the time goes down for each day, and then you have to basically try to get as much done as possible within a day. And then I think you start off with 7 days, and then when you do missions and side quests, it adds points, Aradia, I think they call it, something like that. And then if you get enough of those, it'll bloom another plant on the tree, the Erd tree, whatever it's called. No, that's Elden Ring, whatever the tree is called. And then you get an extra day. And the whole point, you want to try to get 13 days, because it's 13, and then that unlocks like the final dungeon or something, or like an extra secret area. But the cool thing is, if you do fail at your days, you do New Game Plus and you keep all your stats anyway. So what this does, It adds this really interesting system. Imagine like the dress fair system in a way from the 10-2. It has a twist on that. So the belt system, I'm going to show you the back of the cover there as well. You have, they're called schematas, and each schemata is like a different outfit for lightning, so you can play this like weird dress up game with lightning if you want. And you have like the magic ones, blah blah blah, different sort of things like that. You'll have your 3 costumes. You can switch between them in battle. Each one has its own sort of ATB or ability points gauge. The 4 face buttons will have your 4 abilities, and you'll do those attacks, and you have to switch between them to let the other ones kind of recharge. And yeah, it's like a side and side view in a way. You'll have lightning, and then you have like an enemy or a few enemies, and you have to attack them. Kind of like a beat 'em up almost. It works similar to that in a way. Really unique game though. Yeah, I think it's definitely, you know, don't let the time mechanic get in the way of your enjoyment of the game. If you need to, first playthrough to go on easy mode if you have to build up your stats before going on to the harder difficulties. This game is mainly side quest though, doing those little odd jobs, and then as you, because you don't actually level up, but when you complete tasks, you get some stats, and then that's how your character grows. So you want to be doing all those side missions. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's a really cool game. All of these are really great. I think they're all definitely worth your time. Yeah, if you like JRPGs, 360 is what it's at. The console is really cheap to pick up if you're interested. A lot of these are backwards compatible as well. Not all of them, obviously. And they're all pretty dirt cheap as well. So I think, yeah, probably the most expensive one was, I think was like Tales of Vesperia out of these lot, which I might have paid a bit more than I should have done. It was like 20 quid or something. But the rest of them were pretty cheap, under a tenner each. So. But yeah, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed me rambling for like almost an hour about just random games on a subject that I don't think anyone else besides me cares about. But if you did enjoy, you know, like, favorite, subscribe. Favoriting isn't even a thing anymore. That was like an old school YouTube thing, but just like and subscribe anyway. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.